Let's let the live roll for a couple seconds, right quick. Because yesterday, I don't know if you noticed it, but the last podcast really didn't post on YouTube.
I didn't know.
And then if you watched it back, it was very bad.
Was it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was awful. So I'm gonna
Love
pull
to
up.
see that.
I'm pulling it up right now. It says our stream quality is good. We have 0% drop frames, which is a very beautiful thing.
Wonderful, wonderful.
I don't know what was going on with the other day because all the other streams went good. Then I was thinking, I was like, because I had that new microphone thing I use that's supposed to make my mic sound better, the little software.
You cut out a little bit.
It does.
A little bit. Not much. Like once every maybe 20 seconds, but it's like one syllable. It just like it skips like that. Like it'll be like, "Hey, can you are you and then it's back to normal." It's just like 1 or 2 second stutter.
You think I should turn it off? Does it sound worse?
Say talk for 10 seconds.
This is me talking for 10 seconds on the podcast. We're about to get started up YouTube. I'm just letting y'all know. Everything's going to be awesome. It's going to be beautiful. We're going to get this thing
Nope.
rolling.
It would have done it by now. So maybe there was just something weird going on yesterday.
Oh, I turned it. It's not on right now.
Oh, well then turn it back on. See if you want to turn it back on, I'll tell you if it sounds any better. I'll be able to tell you in like 10 seconds.
All right, so I got it back on now. Everything is back clean going, and about to hitting the podcast soon. We're just doing a little audio checks on the live. Everybody can see this. This is very beautiful. I
That's
want
fine.
it does sound fun.
Yeah, it doesn't skip at all like it was last night.
Okay, it might have been honestly, it might have been something on my if my stream was delaying, it might have also been something messing up my Discord, like an internet issue. So that might have been the problem.
Well, it sounded fine. It was just like every few seconds, it would just skip like one syllable. Like it wouldn't. It's not super noticeable. It was just like how, like if you're talking on a weak mic, some of your words aren't as prominent, and like if you lower your voice, they'll like cut out for just like a quick
Yeah,
minute.
yeah, I know what you're
That's
saying.
what it was like that, but it was like every so often. It wasn't a big deal, but I did notice it.
Okay, no, I got you. I got you. Hopefully, everything's back going. Madison, I see you down there. I see you. Appreciate you commenting the hat. See you in the YouTube chats. Well, I think the stream is good. We're testing out the stream. I know last one was really bad, so we're trying to make sure this one looks very beautiful for all you people, and so it can get posted on YouTube right after. Everybody can check it out there. So, Ken, you think we're about ready to hit that record button?
Yep, yep, yep. So we're gonna go tonight. It's episode 5, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
We're going a little lighter on the baseball.
Money Mike just tied it up. Let's go.
Go baby. Some DeJounte Murray stuff, some NFL Hall of Fame talk, and our SEC East breakdown.
Yep. All right, Kenny, I'm about to let it ride. I'll let you know when it's going. Let's ride.
Welcome everyone to episode 5 of the Peach State Tailgate Sports Podcast. It is the episode you've all been waiting for, including us. It is dog time.
Dog time. Ho, ho.
We have been foaming at the mouth to break down the SEC East and talk about wins and what we think the over-under projections should be and what they are according to FanDuel Sportsbook and what we got them at as far as the SEC goes. And the Dogs are the king of the East, and we're going to run this thing back. Spoiler alert. But we're excited to get into it. We went over the West in the last episode, so you knew the East was coming. We saved it for the end, and we're pumped to go over it. It's going to be a little bit of a different format for you today. We don't have as much Braves talk. Baseball is just kind of kicking back after that pitiful series against the Mets that we talked about. We got some DeJounte Murray stuff to go over. He's an absolute dog.
Absolute
And
dog for sure.
we want to hit on the NFL Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame candidates came out of first-year eligibility for some of these guys. So we've got the list. We want to kind of give our 2 cents on what to expect there. And then as far as the SEC goes, it's East time, baby. It's time to talk about the Dogs. I am fired up. Jake, what do you think?
I am so fired up. I believe we are 2.5 weeks now, pretty much from week 0 kicking off. So we're right around the corner from college football, and I know we are very excited. Keanu and I will be on a boat that weekend, betting on some games and a sports bar on a cruise boat. So that's going to be a first. It's going to be a great experience for us. And you know,
Maybe.
I think we're both getting internet packages. So if you can't catch us on here for any sports betting advice, we'll probably be on the Twitter. Putting some stuff out, giving our takes on the Peach State Tailgate Twitter. So or Peach State Pod, I believe, is the Twitter. Yep. Oh, yep. We have it right. Right there. If anybody on YouTube, you can see that. So we're gonna be doing that. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So what do we want to start off with, Key? You want to start off with a little bit of baseball?
Yeah, let's just kind of go over where we are and what's going on right now with the Braves.
Okay, so today, which is Tuesday, August 9th, the Braves are playing right now. They're playing the Boston Red Sox. The Braves entered today's action 7 games on a first. I believe the Reds Mets game got delayed, but it probably should be started by now. I don't have it written down. Yeah, they're winning. The Mets are winning 2-0 in the top of the fourth, so they're actively beating the Reds. The Braves, on the other hand, I know we're tied up 5-5 against the Red Sox. I don't want to dive too much into our game because we will cover that on Thursdays because we don't have a game from yesterday to cover. I do have a little bit of minor league stuff to talk about. Just one quick note on the minor league stuff. Starting pitching prospect Darius Vines got the call from Mississippi to Gwinnett, and he's a guy I've been pretty excited to see. So seeing him get that call up to Gwinnett's going to be nice. He might be a guy that starts to pitch his way into a rotation conversation. I'm not going to say makes his way into a rotation because we kind of got a couple guys in front of him still. But he's a guy I've been pretty high on probably the past 2 years, and to see him get that call to Gwinnett was awesome. We also had a very scary thing happen the other day. Braden Shoemake and Travis Demeritte had a collision in the outfield, and from what I had heard this on earlier this today. Shoemake actually got up to pick the ball up, fell on the ground, and he like acted like he had a leg injury. And when the cart came and got him, they had his legs dangling off, and I think he lost consciousness. So I don't know if it's a leg injury or a head injury. I don't know what happened with him, but it was from what I heard, it's a pretty scary thing.
And I hate to smile and smirk at it and make a joke out of it because it certainly is not a joke. But when you see the report that it's a leg injury and then see the guy being carted off with his legs dangling, that's a little bit concerning.
Yeah. I think everybody thought it was a leg injury, and then, like I said, his legs were dangling off. I don't know how those minor league carts work. I don't think they have any that can fit a grown man on the back. So, those minor league
Yep.
funds might be a little bit low.
Yeah. Can we get the boys a power stroke, please? Long bed. Throw that thing out there. Drop the tailgate. I mean, these are big boys. All right. We need to. Come on, Braves. Liberty Media. Top 5 in payroll. Can we afford maybe a trailer for the back of that thing? I don't know.
We need something. We need to get those guys right. Just a little look ahead. I believe we play Boston again tomorrow. And then we have an off day Thursday. Then we head into a 4-game series in 3 days against the Marlins with a doubleheader set on Saturday. So just a little look ahead. We also have a 4-game series at home against the Mets right after. So things are starting to get a little bit tense right now. Obviously, we want to make the most of these series coming up before the Mets, and then make the most of that series. So if anything, right now we were playing for that wild card spot. I believe we have a 3-game lead on the wild card spot, and I think that's what with only 2.5 in front of the Phillies in the second spot. So we don't really have much wiggle room to play around with like we did maybe like a week ago. So we need to maintain, win some ball games, and roll.
Yeah, with the Padres skid, the Phillies did just take sole ownership of that second spot.
Nice, nice. Well, that's it on my baseball. Just a little bit of minor league stuff today, and we'll get back into Braves coverage Friday's episode.
Yep.
I do want to talk a little bit about basketball. So basketball season's kind of over right now. Whenever we started the podcast, we kind of started the podcast like the dead season of basketball. So we haven't had much basketball stuff to talk about, but we do discuss basketball. I know we also discuss hockey. Kenny's the hockey guy. I'm not really the hockey guy, and I'm the basketball guy. So, but we do want to talk about DeJounte Murray. This is an Atlanta based Georgia based podcast. And DeJounte Murray, obviously everybody knows he's our new addition from the San Antonio Spurs. We traded a full package to get him, 3 first rounders, I believe is what it took to get him. But he is playing in, I don't want to specify what league it is exactly because I honestly have no idea. But I know he's playing against the number 1 overall pick, Paolo Banchero. And he, if you haven't seen the video yet on Twitter, You need to go check it out because he absolutely babied that man. And then they took it to social media and exchanged a lot of fun words over Instagram stories back and forth, which was an interesting thing to keep up with. I think the whole basis of stuff was DeJounte Murray said that whenever Paolo got to the NBA, he completely changed and he didn't stay humble. So DeJounte Murray wanted to humble him. And if you watch the video, I don't know what happened in the whole game. All I was seeing was video clips of the same thing. Paolo might have scored 40 and DeJounte might have scored 10. I don't know. But in that one video clip that got put out, it looked good for DeJounte. It was a nice thing to see. And honestly, seeing DeJounte in San Antonio, I did not expect this to be the type of personality he is. I thought like just seeing how he kind of managed himself on the floor, he kind of seemed like a quiet type guy to me. But yeah, he's definitely not that. He looks like an Atlanta guy. So we'll take him here. We love dogs in Atlanta. We love dogs in Georgia. So if we can add another dog to the squad, we always love it.
Absolute dog.
Absolute dog to go along with one of the most hated players in the NBA, Mr. Trae Young. So it should be we should be in for some fun come late October when them Hawks come rolling back around. Well,
Yeah,
Kenny,
and
oh, go ahead, go
I,
ahead.
I was gonna say I didn't know that these guys had any kind of history too. Like that seems super random to me. I wouldn't have put these two guys in the same sentence as far as anything that they had in the past. Apparently, Paolo was like used to ask to rebound for DeJounte um, back before they got to the league, and now he's coming out here and he's super cocky. And you saw the social media exchanges between the two, so that's kind of funny. Those are two guys I would not have pinned to have a beef against each other. And Banchero, you saw he got a little fiery in the tournament, so
Oh
maybe
yeah,
you kind of expected it from him, but definitely not DeJounte, especially coming out of San Antonio. So this dude is barely a Hawk and might be the most Atlanta player on the team.
that that is true. Is this it reminds me of George Pickens on a basketball court. And
Yeah.
this is not on our plan, but I do want to mention George Pickens. The videos I've seen coming out of camp, George Pickens looks like an absolute freak. Oh my lord, this guy might come into the league and be a top tier wide receiver right away. And then their other guy, Mister oh my, why? How come I am forgetting his name? Deontay
Hey,
Johnson.
Johnson.
Deontay Johnson just got paid. Maybe the Steelers got some weapons for old Mitch over there in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, they got the MVP thrown to him.
Mm-hmm. Money man Mitch. But yeah, I just wanted to mention Pickens. I saw the little thing where he like ran, he like tipped the ball up in the air and then he caught it when he was on the ground and he jumped up and like did a celebration mid practice. It was very George Pickens like and it was very awesome and we love to see it. All right, Kenny, I think that's it in my stuff I want to talk about right now. So, do you want to do Hall of Fame first? Is that what we're gonna dive into first? And I'll let you make that decision.
No, that sounds good to me. They're the NFL released the first year eligible players for the Hall of Fame coming up this upcoming season, and the list is pretty interesting to say the least. There's a couple guys on there that I'm not sure what you think, Jake, but I was a little bit surprised to see some of the names because there's a few guys that I just wouldn't have as like off the top of my head who I would project to make it. So I'm curious to see who the voters get in there. You see a list of some absolute legends on here that are for sure I think shoe-ins, but then a couple guys that I'm not too sure about. So I'm curious to see what you think. It's not something that we're going to spend a lot of time on. We don't have a lot of background to go off of. It's not like a main segment or anything, but just kind of flying off the dome and getting some, face value opinions and kind of first take looks at this. I want to hear what you got to say about it.
All right, so I'm sorry, let me pull up my Twitter on my phone. I was trying to get it on my computer, but that's not working. So if you just give me 1 sec, I will get that thing that you sent me back up. All right, so we have eligible candidates in the backfield. We have Sean Alexander, Tiki Barber, Eddie George, Priest Holmes, Jamal Lewis, and Fred Taylor. And then DBs, we have Rondé Barber, Antonio Cromartie, Rodney Harrison, Asante Samuel, Charles Tillman, aka Peanut, Troy Vincent. We also have, this is the first year guys, Cam Chancellor, Dwight Freeney, James Harrison, Chris Johnson, Darrell Revis, and Joe Thomas. The eligible wide receivers are Anquan Bolden, Torrey Holt, Devin Hester, Chad Johnson, Steve Smith, Reggie Wayne. And then the front seven, we have Jared Allen, Robert Mathis, Zach Thomas, DeMarcus Ware, Vince Wilfork, and Patrick Willis.
I mean, it's kind of a loaded list, to be honest.
No, it definitely is a loaded list. So what's the route we want to take right here? Do we want to give our ideas? So you want to start off with first year guys, the first year guys I listed with Chancellor, Farini, Harrison, Johnson, Revis, and Joe Thomas, the guys you feel like could be like first year guys to get in?
I think that's probably where it's most interesting and
Oh,
controversial,
definitely.
I guess you could say, because there's a couple guys on here that I just, I know it's their first year, but I don't even know. I don't know if I would have them on the board.
Yeah, there's I, do you want to start off because I see a couple guys on here that I would probably put in. There's one guarantee on that list, and I think most people would probably know who it is. Um, I'll
For
let you give
me,
yours first, and then I'll dive into it a little bit.
for me, there's two 100% don't even have to think about it guys on the list, and for me, those two are Joe Thomas and Darrell Revis.
Yes, no doubt. Joe Thomas is the biggest lock you can almost ever put on a Hall of Fame ballot. He will make it all the time. Joe Thomas is one of the best players at his position ever.
Yeah, Joe Thomas is probably in the conversation of best offensive lineman of all time, if not, top five type player. He's obviously, in my opinion, the toughest NFL player ever. I mean, he went on the crazy streak of playing, I don't even know how many consecutive starts and consecutive seasons, but it was nuts. Um, and he played tackle for the Browns, which was obviously until here recently bottom of the barrel franchise and bottom of the barrel organization. So to kind of stick through all the years that he made out there in Cleveland and see as much PT as he did and as many starts as he did, and he really dominated. I mean, that guy's no question for me. First ballot, don't even have to think about it. And the same with Darrell Revis. Darrell Revis, I guess, is kind of controversial because a lot of people think he's the greatest corner of all time. I personally don't. Revis Island was definitely the thing growing up, especially in our day and age. He was the kind of guy that you watched and he did dominate. I know people say he fell off in his later years, but that's kind of across the board. You see a lot of guys, especially at defensive back position. I mean, look at Richard Sherman. But Darrell Revis for me is a lock as well with Joe Thomas. So I don't know if you have anything else on those two guys.
I don't have anything else to say on those two guys. I think you pretty much covered it well with Joe Thomas. Darrell Revis, obviously he was a lockdown corner. He was the number one corner for a good bit of years. So I feel like Darrell Revis is also a shoe in. Those were two of the guys I mentioned, and I also feel like Dwight Freeney. I feel like he's a guy that's also going to get in. Dwight Freeney, he had a legendary career at Indianapolis. I actually pulled up a website. It's I want to give the futurefootballlegends.com. I'm gonna give a little reference to him. And it has a thing called Legend Score, and what it does is it takes a lot of like all pro first teams, and it does like point systems based off all of them. So, in everybody in the Hall of Fame class in 2023, Joe Thomas is second in Legend Score, Dwight Freeney is fourth, and Darrell Revis is fifth. So, if you would combine all their accolades and stuff, that's how they rank up.
Yeah, it's pretty good too. I think those are probably pretty accurate. So I'm a fan of that.
Yeah, and there's also one thing I would like to mention. Our list that we pulled up on Twitter that they put out does not mention it, but Shane Leckler is a first year Hall of Fame guy, and there's only one punter in the Hall of Fame, and it's Ray Guy. But if we go off Legend Score, Shane Leckler is by far the highest Legend Score among any specialist in NFL history with a 73, and you go down to Ray Guy, and Ray Guy has a 37. So Shane Leckler, I know Ray Guy's the only guy, and he has a whole award named after him. But I wouldn't be too opposed to see Shane Leckler get in there. I mean, he was probably the best punter of our lifetime for sure. So I'll give it to him.
100% put him in there without a doubt. Let's
Another. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, let's walk through as far as Twitter. This is BR Gridiron that posted this graphic for the first year guys. Let's just run through the short list that we have in front of us to kind of give the listeners, a perspective of what we're looking at. So it's a list of 6 guys that are eligible for the first year. It's Cam Chancellor at safety, Dwight Freeney at DN, James Harrison at linebacker, Chris Johnson at running back, and then previously mentioned Darrell Revis and Joe Thomas.
Yeah, and I feel like guys like I love Cam Chancellor. Chancellor is awesome. Chris Johnson, same. But I feel like these are just two guys you throw on this list just because of their name. And I'm not saying they're bad players at all, but I don't know if I would consider either one of those Hall of Fame players. And I was just mentioning the thing, the Legend Score thing. For reference, Darrell Revis has a 39 Legend Score, and Cam Chancellor has a 10. So I don't think that, and Chris Johnson has an 8, so I don't know what they really do. Eddie Lacy has 4, so
Yeah, obviously we hit on it. Joe Thomas and Darrell Revis are pretty unanimous, both of our 1 and 2. I'm cool with Dwight Freeney and James Harrison both. Chris Johnson and Cam Chancellor, I'm not. I don't think I would give a vote to either of those guys.
yeah, I agree with that. Another guy I would look for, he was on the ballot last year. Last year was his first year, but it's Devin Hester, I believe. Yeah, Devin Hester. I feel like he's a guy that should be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he's the greatest return specialist ever. And if you're the greatest at anything in anything in life, I think that you are very dominant because it's very hard to be the greatest at any given thing in life. So I'll give Mr. Devin
Agreed.
Hester that.
So from a receiver standpoint, you look at this list as well. I'll run through it really quick. Anquan Bolden, Torrey Holt, Devin Hester, Chad Johnson, Ocho Cinco, Steve Smith, and Reggie Wayne. Devin Hester would be the number one to me because he is undoubtedly the greatest returner of all time. And like you said, if you're the greatest anything of all time, you deserve to be in there. Um, I'm also pretty high on both Torrey Holt and Reggie Wayne as well. Now, I do like Steve Smith and I do like Chad Ochocinco. Um, if I were to go between those two guys, I would probably give the edge to Ochocinco. Do I think he is ultimately deserving? I'm not 100% sure. I wouldn't be upset to see him make it. The only guy I'm looking at on this list and thinking probably not for me is Anquan Bolden, followed by Steve Smith. But again, Steve Smith is kind of a mid tier guy to me.
No, I agree. To me, my top is Torrey Holt. But besides
Mhm.
Devin Hester, we mentioned Devin Hester, but my top is Torrey Holt. After that, I agree with you on the Reggie Wayne, Chad Johnson aspect. I don't think either of those guys ever make it in the Hall of Fame, and honestly, I can't say I think that either of those guys are Hall of Famers. And again, Anquan Bolden was amazing, but he's just not a guy I see being in NFL Hall of Fame. So that's my take on that.
I agree, 100%. You
All
want to
right,
go to the front seven?
yeah, let's do front seven.
Okay, so defensive end, Jared Allen. Also, Robert Mathis. At linebacker, you have Zach Thomas. Defensive end linebacker, DeMarcus Ware. Defensive tackle, Vince Wilfork. And then linebacker, Patrick Willis. I'm going to start this list off, me personally, by saying that Patrick Willis is the second best linebacker that I've ever seen play football. So please put him in there.
Yeah, Patrick Willis is a Hall of Famer. To me, Zach Thomas is a Hall of Famer. I don't see Jared Allen as a Hall of Famer as much as I like Jared Allen. Big Jared Allen fan, but I'm not really too sure if I see him being a guy that makes it in. He's another one of those guys that just what he did on the field, everybody loved him, but I don't know if he ever did enough to be considered a Hall of Famer. Robert Mathis. Robert Mathis is a very interesting guy. Again, I don't see him being in the NFL Hall of Fame. An amazing player, but I don't see it. And for Vince Wilfork and DeMarcus Ware, I don't see. I see DeMarcus Ware making it. I will say that I do see DeMarcus Ware making it. I believe this is his first year or second year, maybe. How long has DeMarcus Ware been on the ballot? I
I don't
don't.
think too long.
Yeah, I don't think too long at all. And he's a guy I could see making it, but honestly, Vince Wilfork, I don't see him making it unless it's off the namesake.
Okay, I'm gonna disagree with you on one point. I do have Jared Allen in there. I think Jared Allen, primarily just for how dominant he was in the seasons where he was elite. I know Jared Allen might not have the sustainability of some other guys when you look later into his career, but I do think Jared Allen, for the time that he was dominant, was one of the most dominant players I've ever seen. So I would be happy to see Jared Allen make it. I'm with you on Robert Mathis and Vince Wilfork both. Obviously, my top two are going to be Patrick Willis and Zach Thomas. And for reference, I said Patrick Willis is the second best linebacker I've ever seen play. It's second to Ray Lewis. And those guys kind of ruled the time that they were in the league together as 1 and 2. So I'm going to say Patrick Willis, Zach Thomas, Jared Allen, and DeMarcus Ware for me. Vince Wilfork, I love you. Robert Mathis, you're an absolute stud. I probably wouldn't give the nod to either one of those guys.
No, I respect that. I do respect it. I found this website and I am now I'm honestly obsessed with this website and I'm about to pin it on my computer, but and all this stuff is just random stuff. Obviously, this doesn't really mean much because I think it also takes into like consideration like Pro Bowls and stuff, but Just for reference, Jared Allen has a 25 Hall of Fame score, and Haloti Ngata has a 27.
That's very interesting.
That is a very, very interesting thing, and I just caught that live. Like, I want to give the little reference. This was something that Kenny had sent me, and right before we hopped on, we were like, "Hey, do you want to talk about this? Sure, why not?" So it's not like we were super prepared for this. We don't have stats sitting in front of us. We don't have notes for it. It's just something we wanted to go. He is in front of James Harrison, but I don't think James Harrison's a Hall of Famer. But it's going to be interesting to see his case.
Um, All right, so let's dive into the last couple position groups that we have on this year's ballot for backfield and defensive backs. Backfield, this list is kind of interesting to me. There's a couple names that stick out to me, and two that I would give my Hall of Fame nod to. You see the list top to bottom is Sean Alexander, Tiki Barber, Eddie George, Priest Holmes, Jamal Lewis, and Fred Taylor. For me, it's undoubtedly Sean Alexander and Eddie George.
I was thinking the same exact thing. Those are the only two guys on that list that I would put in the Hall of Fame.
I agree.
I'm actually happy you went that route. When we look at this right here, the thing I'm looking at, Sean Taylor is the highest. He has the most out of any running back like that is currently on it, and it includes guys that even have future like candidacy, like LaShawn McCoy and Marshawn Lynch. The next closest guy is Frank Gore's on here, so none of these other guys are really even close. Priest Holmes is the next closest guy on this ballot, like on that's
Agreed.
showing these numbers. So I'm with you on that. I feel like Sean Alexander and Eddie George are the two guys I would roll with.
100%. And then let's round it out with defensive backs. This list is pretty interesting as well. There's a couple avenues you could take. I have three. Um, Top to bottom: Rondé Barber, Antonio Cromartie, Rodney Harrison, Asante Samuel, Charles Tillman, and Troy Vincent. For me, it is clearly Rodney Harrison, Asante Samuel, and Charles Tillman.
I absolutely agree. I feel like Rodney Harrison and Asante Samuel I have a little bit higher than Charles Tillman. I love the peanut punch. Charles Tillman is a legend, and I'm sure that any coach out there will show their kids Charles Tillman highlights because he was the master of forcing fumbles at the cornerback position, and he was a little tiny guy. So he showed you could do it anyway, and I absolutely agree. Rondé Barber was also. Did you say him?
I did
Because
not say him, but he is on the list.
I think Rodney Barber or Rondé Barber also has some pretty good one. Not too big on Antonio Cromartie. I'm not too high on his candidacy, but I honestly could see any of these guys making it.
Defensive back's one of those positions too, to where you can have a couple sleepers. There's a couple iconic defensive backs from NFL history that are on the that are in the Hall of Fame, and I don't think there's too bad of an argument that you can make for anybody on this list. I think an argument could be heard for you know any of these guys, but yeah, I agree with you on the standpoint of Rodney Harrison and Asante Samuel at 1 and 2, and then I had Peanut Tillman at 3. I would put Peanut in there.
Okay, yeah, I respect it. I can go with it. I ain't got nothing to say against it. So I'm cool with that one. So that was a little bit of Hall of Fame stuff, and like we said, this is not something that we had prepared for. This is just something we wanted to give y'all. So this is more something that y'all can give y'all's own takes on if you didn't know about, and y'all can get a little bit of mine and Kenny's knowledgeless takes. I will say, other than our
Yeah,
eye test on guys that we watched when we were like 13, that's about it.
yeah. Put Peyton Hillis in there, first ballot.
Yeah, Peyton Hillis, former Madden cover athlete. Madden curse got him, but
Well, that rounds it out for me for Hall of Fame talk. I'm super pumped about this next segment, Jake. Are you ready to move on?
I am so pumped, and this is what I've been waiting for since we started. So,
Me too, brother. And I think, for anybody that's listening, any of our viewers, if you're listening to us, you are very, very, very aware of our fandom and where we stand as far as college football goes. So the SEC East is a big one for us because we are dogs. We're dog fans through and through. So we've been waiting on this one. You saw us break down the West in the last episode. We talked about the over-unders for wins and win totals and what we think we'll see in our projections. We had a couple disagreements that were pretty interesting, and I'm curious to see what we think about the East when we stack up against each other because this is the side of the SEC that we are most familiar with. We've been watching these teams play every year our entire life since we could see the TV and watch football. So let's dive into it, man. I want to kick it off in alphabetical order. Um, let's start with the University of Florida. I'll let you kick it off, Jake.
All right, so University of Florida is entering the season with an over/under of 7 for total wins on the season. I'm not gonna dog Florida fans yet. I have to say that for a little bit later. It's a tradition that I dog out Florida fans on this podcast or YouTube stream. Week one, they start off week one, and they play Utah at home. I had them losing that football game. Utah is a great football team, to say the least. I think Utah is a team that could potentially make a play for a college football playoff spot. I don't know if that's something you also agree with, Kenny, but they are a team that could definitely possibly be in that conversation.
Well, with that conference and the way that it lines up, the competition is obviously very, very, very weak. So you saw the way they dominated last year against a team like Oregon, and we talked about it a little bit off air, and I think we watched both of those games last year together, if I'm not mistaken. And Utah was clearly the better football team. They're bringing back almost the entire team. They've got great coaching. They've got great players. So and obviously, I'm gonna let Jake run through his before I run through mine and I do my breakdown. But I agree with you 100%. Florida's gonna lose that week one matchup.
All right, I'm pulling up a little bit of my pack my Big 10, my Big 12 stuff, or not Big 12. I'm sorry, my Pac 12 stuff. I am messed up, and I am looking back at my notes, and I remember a couple episodes ago I had mentioned that it is between USC and Utah for me, and I had put USC in my college football playoff. So I wanted to mention that, just for a little little knowledge about how high I might be on Utah, and to let you know that I think Utah's going to win that game, and I don't think it's going to be a rather close football game.
I
Um,
will I will be putting my money on that football game. I'm curious to see what that spread looks like. I don't know if it's out, if you can get an early line on it. I'm assuming Utah is going to be favored. If I could catch like a 6.5 on this game, I'd be a happy, happy dude.
I would also put a little money on that. Okay, so we go into week two. Week two, Florida's playing Kentucky at home. I have them also taking the L, starting out the season 0-2. Then they play University of Southern Florida at home, and I have them getting their first win of the season against University of Southern Florida. Week four, they go to Tennessee. I have them losing that game. Week five, they play Eastern Washington at home. I have them winning. Week six, they play Missouri at home. I have them winning. And week seven, they play LSU at home, and I have them winning that football game. I know we had talked about it last podcast, so I had to roll with it. And I will say it was a lot harder when I got to this side of it to put a dub by that. When I was just going through LSU's schedule, it was a lot easier to give them the L than it is to give Florida the dub. But I had to stick with it. I didn't want to look like a bozo and be like, oh, yeah, Florida's going to lose this game. And then all of a sudden, all my stuff does not line up. So this is kind of a forced thing from past Jake that caused this. And we're going to roll with it for now. Week 8, they head into a bye right before they play Georgia and Jacksonville. It's a neutral site game, but it's a home game for Georgia. We'll go ahead and say that. I obviously have them taking the L against Georgia. Week 10 at Texas A&M, I have them losing that game. Week 11, they play South Carolina at home. I have them losing that football game. Week 12, they're going to Vanderbilt. I have them getting a fat dub. I will give you that, Florida fans. You might beat Vanderbilt by 40. Week 13, at Florida State. This was a very, very hard one, and I would circle this one for maybe one of my most interesting games on Florida's schedule, because we had discussed Florida State in a little bit of depth last week. Because what team is it? What team leads off against Florida State this year? Um,
Jake, put me on the
I
spot.
just put you on the spot so hard. I know we had talked about it and we looked it up.
Week one, Florida State has LSU.
LSU week one. That's correct. We had talked a little bit more in depth about Florida State due to that on our SEC West breakdown, and we talked some good stuff on Florida State, saying how Florida State could possibly win that game. I have Florida losing to Florida State at Florida State week 13. That adds up to a final record of 5-7. So I am at a pretty healthy under on the over/under of 7 wins for the University of Florida.
All right. Well, I actually have a little bit of a breakdown on this Florida team because there's a couple interesting points for me. A lot of people are high on Florida because of the guy we've mentioned several times, Anthony Richardson, the most unproven quarterback in college football.
Yes.
So I'm going to go ahead and rip through this. Florida, the over under is 7, as Jake mentioned. I've got some notes. I'm just going to kind of rip through it. I hate the Billy Napier as a Gator now because now I have to hate him. Otherwise, this dude, I'm a big fan of him. So when you put on orange and blue, you turn into a absolute enemy to me. So I hate that I have to pull against a guy like Billy Napier, but a good way to make me do it is to put on a Florida polo and stand on the sidelines. Um, he's a good coach. He demands a lot from his players. If anyone can get some good ball out of the boys from Gainesville, it's going to be him. Now, with that being said, this team is absolutely hot garbage, man. Anthony Richardson is an unproven player and is severely, severely overrated. This man played 7 games last year. He touted a 59% completion percentage, a whopping 529 passing yards, and the incredibly impressive touchdown interception ratio of 6-5. Um, Now he does run pretty well, which is a good thing when you consider the big question marks that this team has at running back and offensive line. So you take that as you will. Now, all right, I bashed Florida's offense enough, so let's talk about the strong suits of the offense. The receiving core, they're bringing back junior Justin Shorter. He's the clear number one wide receiver on that team. He had an unbelievable season last year, racking up 41 total receptions, 550 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I mean, Heisman sleeper in this guy. Um, those are all highs among the entire team. When you talk about this group of pass catchers and you move to the number two receiver spot with Xavier Henderson, man's got 3 touchdowns in 2 seasons at Florida. Incredibly impressive. And if you thought that was impressive, let's talk about the tight end room. This Florida tight end group is stacked. If you look top to bottom on the roster at all of Florida's tight ends, um, not one of them has caught a single college pass.
I think they could use some help from Georgia right there.
Not one. To avoid any more time spent on this dumpster fire of a program, the defense is just as horrendous as the offense, maybe even worse. The defense is ranked 99th in the country in returning players and returning production.
Hmm.
This team's absurd, dude. You look at them offensively and defensively. I had a little satire in there. I had to. Um, I've got their key games to avoid going through the full schedule like Jake just did. Week 4 at Tennessee, I've got them taking the L. Week 6 at Mizzou or versus Mizzou at home, I've got them taking the W there. I do have them winning Week 11 against South Carolina at home. I think Florida's a team that's going to mess around and win a couple SEC East games, just the kind of team they are. And then Week 13 at FSU, just as Jake mentioned, I also have them losing that game. We did a breakdown on FSU. I think this team's better than they were last year and better than a lot of people give them credit for. So I am 100% in total agreement with Jake here. I've got them also at 5-7. And as far as a future betting perspective goes, I'll be hammering the under for Florida without a
I
doubt.
I agree 100%. And talking about the defense, I want to mention that Brenton Cox may be the smartest human on the planet because if he would have stayed one more year at Georgia, he would have been forced to transfer over to Auburn Technical College to play college football because Kirby Smart would have noticed. I mean, he already did notice, but he would have noticed even more. Yeah, this guy is not very good at football, and we are going to sit him on the bench. I saw the little clip you had sent me of him chasing Stetson Bennett and giving up as soon as Stetson Bennett made one move to the right and not even chasing him. Yeah, so that's a guy that represents Florida very well. He represents Florida football. And talking about Billy Napier, I like Billy Napier, but I've liked a lot of smaller college coaches that have came to the SEC to coach football. And it just so happens that it seems like a lot of those smaller coaches that come to the SEC in football, 3 years later, you forget where they even are and forget who they are. So I'm a little bit nervous for old Billy that he might run into that same situation. And my prediction is that I remember I talked about this during the hire, and I like Billy Napier. I think he's an awesome guy. He's a great football coach. I'm nervous that Florida's not going to give him the chance that he needs because it's going to take a couple years, and I hope that that athletic director and all that stuff understand that Billy Napier's not going to come in year 1, year 2, not even year 3 probably, and just change this program around that already can't recruit. Like I don't know if Billy Napier is going to be the guy that just comes in and changes everything. So there's a lot of things going on in Florida, and I honestly don't see it getting any brighter anytime soon.
You just can't expect him to. And you look at a guy like Lincoln Riley when he goes to USC and the kind of players that he brings from Oklahoma to USC with him. And a lot of things Florida fans will tell you is that Billy Napier is going to bring some boys with him. Okay, he can bring whoever he wants to, man. But when he's bringing those Louisiana boys to the SEC, it's a different play. It's a different style of ball out here. And we say it, and it's cliche, but it is different down here. It is. And on a bottom tier team like this Florida Gators team is, it's going to be an ugly one. And I do like Billy Napier, or I did until he took the job. So, best of luck to him. Not really. Actually, never mind. So, I'm I'm done with Florida.
I am also done with Florida. You have the list in ABC order. I'm assuming that this leads us to. I'm not good with my ABCs, but this is Georgia, correct?
Yep, it leads us to Georgia. Now, I do want to skip Georgia. I want to save it to the end, like we did with Alabama. Or I don't know if we saved
We
Alabama for
led
the
off
end.
with Alabama, but
That's right. Well, no, I want to save Georgia for the end because we are fans. So let's skip them and go straight into Kentucky. I'll kick it off with Kentucky because you kicked it off with Florida. I do have a little breakdown on this team as well. The over/under for them in wins is set at 7.5, which is a pretty interesting number to me, considering the season they come off of a 10-win year like they had last season. So 7.5, I feel like is a little bit low. I would have expected to see it more 8.5, 9, if I'm being honest. So that was surprising to me. Quick breakdown on them. There are several big holes to fill from last season, but the 2022 roster was boosted by a lot, or is boosted by a lot of NFL draft prospects that are coming back to the school, and they also have a lot of important defenders that are taking that extra year of eligibility that they got from the COVID year. So I'm looking at that as well. Obviously, you got a guy like Will Levis. He's steering the ship. He's an absolute dog, top 3 quarterback in the SEC, either way you look at it. They lose their offensive coordinator and their record-breaking star receiver in Wan'Dale Robinson to the draft. Now they bring in a guy like Tavion Robinson from Virginia Tech, and he's not Wan'Dale by any means, but you pair him with returning starters and a now healthy tight end room, which they did not have last year. And they bring in a couple 4-star wide receiver recruits as well that could get some PT. I think you're looking at a quality receiving core for Levis to throw to. Obviously, the running game is there. You've got Chris Rodriguez. He's a hometown boy. This is a pretty interesting point here. He's only 11 and some change hundred yards away, rushing yards away from breaking Benny Snell's career rushing record for that school. So I'm looking, hopefully we're going to see him do that. I'd love to see that from a hometown guy.
oh yeah, for
Um,
sure.
Now, I'm looking at the offensive line to be the weak point for this team. They lost multiple starters to the draft. So I'm curious to see. Now, Will Levis, obviously, when you have an elite quarterback, they can kind of get by with some weak offensive line play. So this is a team where maybe you see that win-loss over/under for them be affected by that offensive line a little bit. So I'm not alarmed by it by any means, but I do think that's probably the weakest point offensively. Now, the defense for this team is very, very good. They're a great defense. They're probably a top 10 defensive line across all classifications in college. You pair it with an extremely experienced linebacking core. They're bringing back some 6-year guys, like I just mentioned, with the COVID year, and a very elite safety tandem. I think this unit's pretty scary. If they can stop the pass, which they were not very good at last year, they're going to be a complete team. So watch out for that. Now, schedule breakdown for them. They kick off week 1 at home against Miami, Ohio. Then they travel to the Swamp to take on the Gators. Week 3, the Youngstown State Penguins.
Oh yeah.
Um, then you see a matchup against NIU the following week. They travel to Ole Miss to take on the Rebels in Oxford. They see South Carolina at home, Mississippi State at home as well, headed into the bye. They come out of the bye at Tennessee and Neyland. Then they travel to Columbia to take on the Tigers in Missouri. Then they have Vandy at home, followed by Georgia at home, followed by Louisville at home as well in the rivalry week. Key games for me, I've got week 5 at Ole Miss. Now, this is a little bit of a home field advantage for the Rebels here, and I think it's going to be a heavy passing game. Week 5, you're going to see Jackson Dart come into his own. I think Jake and I are both pretty high on him. I think he's a good quarterback. So I'm looking at that team. I think they stack up pretty well against a weak passing defense in Kentucky. Now, Kentucky can get after the quarterback and stop the run, but I'm just not too sure on how run heavy this Ole Miss offense is going to be. So I have Kentucky taking the L there. I also have them taking the L in Week 7 against Mississippi State. This comes down to the offense again in a pass-heavy team like Mississippi State and how they like to throw the ball in that air raid. If by the 7th game of this year, if Kentucky can't figure out that passing defense, I think they could get into a little trouble here. So I've got that as a loss as well. Now, an interesting thing about this one is that's Kentucky's homecoming game at home. So that's a pretty interesting dynamic. It's kind of an interesting game to schedule your homecoming game against, especially when you consider, the multiple home games that they have later into the season. I know it's a little late for a homecoming game, but I would have looked more to a November 12th matchup against Vandy. So that's, however you want to take that. And then I've also got as the final key game for this team at the end of the season, Week 9 at Tennessee. I do have them taking the win there. I think that'll give them a little bit of time. They're coming off the bye. I think they're going to come off a loss to Mississippi State where they get depleted in the passing game, head into Tennessee a little bit more prepared. I think they'll take the win there. So my total win for the Kentucky team, I have my projected record for them at 9-3. So I will be absolutely taking the over for them at 7.5. Like I mentioned in the beginning, I think that's pretty low.
No, I agree. It's definitely low, and 9-3 is what they finished with last year in the regular season. So I don't see them declining much off last year. Um, I'll do my Kentucky. Like we said, 7.5 is their over under and wins. Um, Obviously the first 4 weeks, I think they're gonna win all four of those games. They have play Florida week 2 at Florida, but as mentioned earlier, I have Kentucky beating Florida. Week 5 is definitely going to be a tough matchup. Against Ole Miss in Ole Miss. I do have Kentucky winning that football game. I always talk so highly on their head coach Mark Stoops and how I think that he may be the best head coach to handle what he has around him. And every single year we look at Kentucky and the season finishes up and we're playing in the SEC championship and you look back, you're like, holy cow, Kentucky's ranked 16th in the nation and they won eight or 9 games this year. Or nobody pays attention. They won 9 or 10 games. I remember a couple of years back. I think we played Kentucky. I think we were both 8-0 at the time. And at that point, whoever was going to win that game was going to be leading the SEC East. So, Kentucky's definitely a team that can sneak up on you. Week 6 versus South Carolina, it's also a really, really big game, but I have the home field advantage. I'm going with Kentucky, and then they play Mississippi State. And I was surprised by this, Kenny. I must say, you have Mississippi State winning a game that I have Mississippi State losing. Never thought I would see this day. I have Kentucky beating Mississippi State in week 7. Week 8, they had the
I
bye.
think it could go either way there. I really do. And the only reason that I gave Mississippi State the win there is because of the concern in the pass defense for Kentucky. So, not a bad take. I could see that one going either way, but I ultimately came down to a win for the Bulldogs.
Oh yeah, I always love a win for the Bulldogs. Maybe
Yeah,
not the Mississippi State Bulldogs, but anytime you say Bulldogs win, I'm gonna cheer. So week
there you go.
9, at Tennessee, I have them losing that football game. I'm very high on Tennessee. We talk about, and that's kind of the aspect that you went with right there. We talk about Tennessee's high, you talk about Tennessee's fast-paced offense and how fast they like to move. They're a team that can get up on you quick, and I just like what Tennessee's going to run out this year. Week 10 at Missouri. I have them beating Missouri in Missouri. Week 11 versus Vanderbilt. That's a win. That is a win for Kentucky all day long. Week 12 versus Georgia at home. They are losing that football game. Week 13 versus Louisville. They're going to win that game. So that puts me at a final record of drumroll 10-2. I but I want to mention that there is multiple games on this schedule that I could see going either way. And not so much like I'm not going to say that they're going to lose like all these games, but that you are right that that 3 week match, that 3 week span from week 5 to week 7 between going to Ole Miss then playing South Carolina and Mississippi State at home, that's going to be a pretty tough stretch. And then Tennessee after the bye, obviously that's going to be a pretty good one. I mean, they're going to be rested up and ready to roll, but I could definitely see them losing at least one of those games versus Ole Miss, South Carolina, Mississippi State.
100%.
And to give my little output on the line, I think you said it perfectly. I don't see a world in where Kentucky loses or wins less than 8 games. I think Kentucky is pretty comfortably at least an 8-4 football team with that schedule.
I'm with you all day on that.
All right,
All
so
right, well,
is that enough Kentucky talk?
that's good for me. If we head into the next team on my list, I've got Missouri here.
All right, so we got Missouri. I'll kick us off. Over under for wins is 5.5. They lead off the season versus Louisiana Tech. I have them winning that football game. Then they go to Kansas State. I actually have Missouri losing that game against Kansas State. We play Abilene Christian at home. That's a win. At Auburn in week 4. That's a loss. They play Georgia at home week 5. I have them losing that game. Then they play Florida at Florida. I have them losing that game. They have a bye week in week 7. Then they play Vanderbilt at home. That's a win. Week 9 they go to South Carolina. They're losing that game. Week 10, they play Kentucky at home. They're going to lose. Week 11, they go to Tennessee. They're going to lose. And then week 12, they get a little bit of a fresh air breath, and they play New Mexico State at home. I'm confident in you, Missouri. You can win that game. I have you winning that game. Week 13, they play Arkansas at home, and they're going to end the season on a loss. That is a final record of 4-8. So I am going to cash in the under.
Okay, so that's pretty interesting. We're a little different here, Jake.
All right. I'm assuming. Was it my Kansas State? Was it my Kansas State? I know it
There
was.
were there were a couple games here. A couple that surprised me were Kansas State and Auburn. I was a
Yeah.
little bit surprised by both of those. Now the Kansas State one, I'm in complete disagreement with you. I think Missouri might dismantle Kansas State. Now, I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means. Now, Auburn, I could definitely see that. You're traveling to Jordan Hare, so that's an interesting one. Um, Now, I've got a couple notes on this Missouri team that I wanted to hit on. Nothing crazy, but in 2 years under their head coach Elijah Drinkwitz, I want to say is how you pronounce his last name. They've won 9 straight games against teams that finished with a losing record, and lost 11 of 12 against power conference teams that finished with an even or winning record. So when I think the word Missouri, I think average, and I think that's the most prime example of an average football team. You win 9 straight against losing teams and lose 11 of 12 against even or winning teams. That is the most average football team you could possibly get. So that's just a kind of interesting stat that I saw. Very average team. They bring in a good recruiting class, but it just doesn't move me at this point. Now, could they be a team that gets up in the win column a little bit more in years to come? Sure. But at this point, I'm not moved by the Missouri team. Jake broke down the schedule, so I won't do the same thing. But key games for me, I had week 4 at Auburn. I do have them taking the win there. I don't think Auburn's a good football team. We mentioned that in the last episode. Week 6 at Florida, I also had them losing that game. I think a team like Missouri traveling to the swamp, I think they're probably going to get outplayed and probably out atmosphered by the Florida team. And obviously, we're not high on Florida either, but I do have them taking the loss there. And then they travel to South Carolina in week 9. I also have them taking the loss there as well. So pretty similar on a couple points, but different on a couple others as well. So interestingly enough, a team like Missouri, um, I mean, you look at their over under and with the win projection for them at 5.5. I think that's an interesting number. It's kind of a stinky line for me because I mean I don't know about you, but I wouldn't even think about touching this 5.5 win total.
I don't know. I probably wouldn't bet on it. I probably don't have much confidence in Missouri going either way. And we had mentioned earlier, Missouri was on my rankings. I had them above Florida, and obviously record wise, now I have Florida above Missouri. I look back, and I wanted to go back to Kansas State a little bit, and Kansas State, and I didn't go back to returners or anything like that. I didn't do that much research. I just looked at their success they had last year, and Kansas State was 8-5 last year. And we look at their losses. Kansas State, their losses was Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Iowa State, Baylor, and Texas. And then they went to their bowl game, the Texas Bowl, and beat LSU 42-20. So I don't know if I would write out, and we're talking about they lost to all those teams minus Iowa State. So they lost to Texas, Baylor, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State by a combined 32 points. I feel like that if you put Missouri against Oklahoma, they might lose by 32 alone. So I don't know. I don't want to go like too far into it because I didn't do too much research on who Kansas State's returning, all that fun stuff. I was just looking at their success last year, and I just had a gut feeling, man. I had a gut feeling with Kansas State, so I had to
Well, it's
roll
an
with them with the
interesting game
dub.
too because they are traveling to Kansas, so
That is also something I had in consideration.
it's a different dynamic. Now, it's not a primetime game by any means. I think it's a 12 o'clock game actually. Um, but that's an interesting. It's an interesting dynamic when you think about the road trip they've got to make. So no, I don't fault you for taking that at all. I do think Missouri is going to come away with the win there. So I didn't hit on it. I wanted to touch on the line first. 5.5, I think, is super stinky. Now, surprisingly enough, I do have Missouri at 6-6. I have them at an even team. I think they'll have an even record. I think the schedule's pretty favorable, all things considered, when you talk about Louisiana Tech, Kansas State, Abilene Christian, regardless of the Kansas State situation. They have a pretty, they've got some cupcake games in there. followed by New Mexico State at the end of the year. So I have them at 6-6. It's kind of a surprising 6-6 for me. I wouldn't have had them that high just off the dome. So doing a little bit of research, I do have them at 6 wins. Am I confident in it? No, 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 I'm not at all. So 5.5. That's a stinky line. I wouldn't even think about taking it. So that wraps it up for Missouri for me.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention the Auburn thing too. I always talk about. I feel like I mention this every time we talk about college football. If it's a close matchup to me, and I can't pick in my head who I think is going to win, I always go with the home team. So that was my thinking with Auburn. I don't see neither of these teams. I feel like they're pretty close to the same caliber. I would put Missouri, Auburn, and Florida pretty close to the same tier. If I was to do a tier list, and that's second to bottom above Vanderbilt. So
That's fair.
so I just whenever you play Auburn, in Auburn, it could always be a tough game.
That's 100% fair.
And then
Um,
that's all I got to say on Missouri.
All right. Well, next on the list, if we're going in order, I've got South Carolina right here. So you kicked off Missouri. I'll kick off South Carolina. The over under and regular season wins is set at 6.5, which I also think is a pretty interesting number. Not because of what I think, but because I was going off of what the public thinks. I think 6.5 is actually a pretty accurate line here. I think South Carolina is a decent football team. I like their coaching. So I was surprised to see 6.5. I thought it would be higher. I thought we might get a 7.5 right here if I were to give you my prediction of what I was going to see on the sports book, because a lot of people are very high on this team and a lot of people are high on Spencer Rattler, not me included. Um, so, with that being said, let's dive into South Carolina. Shane Beamer, I'm a fan. He knew that he was only going to be judged by how many games he would win. Coaching is all about wins. It's not really
Yes.
about anything else, especially when you come to the SEC. So even in his first season, he knew this, but I mean, he also knew winning is going to be tough. Especially when you head into an organization or a school, I should say, like South Carolina. I mean, he's kind of given the remnants of a program that they had only won 6 games over 2 seasons total. So Shane really had to rebuild the entire culture of this program from the bottom up, because they were kind of a dumpster fire. Now, truthfully, I think he did it. If I'm giving my personal opinion, Beamer's a guy, and winning 3 of the last 5 games they finished the regular season with last year, that's kind of a hot run, and you bring a little confidence to the fan base and a little optimism to the fan base. Now they finished the regular season last year at 6-6. They did beat North Carolina pretty heavily. I think it was, I want to say 38-20, 38-21, something like that. They played in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. I remember that because I actually bet on North Carolina in that game, and I was very surprised. Um, Now Beamer, he didn't really do much this offseason but add to an already improving team. So he brings in some guys. So this is kind of where I was surprised to see the 6.5 line. I thought it would move higher because they got some pretty heavy acquisitions. I mean, you talk about the recruits they got, to the transfers, to a former Heisman Trophy favorite in Spencer Rattler. They've got a really good pass defense. Surprisingly, a lot of people didn't know this, but South Carolina actually had the #1 passing defense in the SEC last year from a takeaway standpoint,
Hmm.
which is I would not have known that if I didn't dive into the numbers. But they've got a really bad rushing defense and a really heavily retooled offense. I think they've got the ability to compete in the SEC East for like third, maybe. I don't know. This team, I'm kind of perplexed by what this team can do and my projections of the team, because we really don't know. You talk about bringing in a guy like Spencer Rattler. He could give you one of two types of seasons. He can give you a absolute horrible season like you had last year where he doesn't really know what to do. And, I don't want to dive into it too much because we've already talked about it in past episodes. But Spencer Rattler, played in the most quarterback friendly system in college football history, in my opinion, and did not thrive there. So I don't see much of a reason for me to be high on him when he comes to the SEC and plays for this Gamecock team, other than the fact that Shane Beamer's a good coach. So if anybody can reel him in, it'll be Beamer. I'm just not sure he will. Key games for me, and Jake, I'll let you do the full schedule breakdown. But
Okay.
for my key games, I've got week 2 at Arkansas, week 6 at Kentucky, week 9 against Missouri at home, week 11 at Florida in the Swamp, and week 12 at Tennessee and Neyland. I've got them losing the week 2 matchup at Arkansas. I've got them losing the week 6 matchup at Kentucky. And then I've got them sweeping in my other key games. I've got them beating Missouri at home, beating Florida on the road, and beating Tennessee on the road. Tennessee is the only one that I was back and forth on. And the only reason that I gave them the win at Tennessee is because I think Tennessee, they do it year in, year out. They let down at the end of the season. I'm pretty high on the Tennessee team as well. Now, I'm a Georgia fan, so I do not like that gaudy orange. I do not like Tennessee. I just don't.
No, thank
But
you.
they've got some studs. So the only reason I have them taking the W there in Week 12 is because of this passing defense. They're bringing back almost everybody, and I just hit on it that from a takeaway perspective, they're the top of the SEC. So if they can even scratch the surface of what they did last year and kind of bring that passing defense back to a minimal amount of what it was, I think they'll have a good shot at winning that game. So I do have them taking the win there. So 6.5 line, I've got them finishing the year at 7-5. So I do have them over. This is a line that I probably would not touch. I feel a little bit better about this line than I do Missouri, because I do think it's probably, like I said, I think it's probably right at 6.5. I do, but I think if South Carolina is going to do anything at that 6.5 line, it's go over. So I'm not going to put any money on it, me personally, but I have them at 7 wins.
I respect that. I respect that for sure. So like we said, 6.5 over under. The schedule, they play Georgia State at South Carolina. That's gonna be absolute blowout. I'm sorry, Georgia State. We're a Georgia podcast. We love you guys. Probably much more than your rivals down in the South, or much less than your rivals down in the South, I should say. Southern all day. Southern alumni half a semester or one full semester actually. Let's go. College dropout. Week 2 at Arkansas. I have South Carolina taking an L. I that's one of those games that it's going to be a close game. It's going to be a really good matchup, but I feel like it could be one of those games that we see stay close in the first half, and then Arkansas reels in and wins the game by 17 points. So I don't know if it's going to be a final box score game that's going to look pretty for South Carolina. It's going to be something you take away from. And then after that tough matchup, I'm so sorry. Y'all have to come over to Athens and play the Dogs at home week 3. That's going to be a very ugly game again. I don't think the South Carolina is quite there yet. In the same aspect of Florida, besides I feel like they're a lot closer than Florida is. I feel like South Carolina is trying to build a dynasty down there, and they're definitely close. South Carolina is, I think, maybe a couple years away from really competing, but until Georgia, has a significant drop off, I don't see them being anywhere close. Week 4 versus Charlotte, that's a dub. Week 5 versus South Carolina State, that's a dub. Week 6 at Kentucky, I have South Carolina losing that game. Kentucky's tough. You have to go over to Kentucky. It's not going to be a very fun environment to play in, and I don't. Again, going back to South Carolina being where they're at now, I don't see South Carolina being there yet to beat Kentucky. Week 7, we have a bye week, so you get a little lucky there. Nice little close matchup with the bye. Don't get beat by the bye now. Week 8 versus Texas A&M. This is going to be a very interesting one to talk about. We had talked about the West, and now we're going to talk about the East. When I was discussing Texas A&M, and I was looking at their schedule, I had to find a spot to put another loss on that schedule. And that spot that I came up with that seemed the most likely to me was this Week 8 matchup coming off the bye for South Carolina. So I have South Carolina going over to Texas A&M and surprising everybody and beating Texas A&M on the road. That is my idea. The 12th man is not going to be relevant. South Carolina is going to go over there and win that football game. That is my take. And honestly, if I was doing SEC East first, I would put an L there. So I'm an honest man. I'm going to keep it 100% real and tell you that. But since we did the West
Keeping it
first,
consistent.
yeah, I got to keep it consistent. So since the West was first, I put an L there. I'm gonna put a dub on South Carolina's side to Texas A&M week 8. Week 9 they play Missouri. This is going to be another big game. I do have them beating Missouri. Week 10 at Vanderbilt. That's a dub. Week 11 at Florida, it might be a tough game. Going down to the Swamp's going to be tough. And we talk about South Carolina where they're at now, but I think they're still going to pull it out. Week 12 versus Tennessee at home. I have South Carolina winning that football game. I wanted to throw some wins on South Carolina's board because I feel like South Carolina is gonna put up a decent season. I'm not super high on them, but I am actually looking at the final record right now. I might be super high on them. And then week 13 at Clemson, that's a L. They're not gonna win that game. So that sets me at a final record of 8-4 for South Carolina. So we weren't too far off on that. Obviously, that puts me at the over. But it's not a super confident over because I had them at 8-4, and that's with a win versus Tennessee and a win at versus Texas A&M. I'm looking at it so wrong. They actually played Texas A&M at home. I had said whenever I mentioned it earlier, I mentioned them going on the road. I was looking at it wrong. They actually played them at home, I believe. So that might have been maybe my thinking of it the other day when I was doing this whole thing. So I wanted to get that out the way. My apologies on that. It's a slip up.
Let me ask you this, Jake. If you were to not have looked at a sports book prior to this episode, where would you have expected to see their over under and wins?
South Carolina.
Yeah.
Um, that's a very interesting question. I feel like it's at a very fair point where it is now, but I honestly wouldn't have been surprised to see them at a 7 or a 7.5 with how highly they've been talked about this offseason.
It really surprised me, dude. I really thought I was going to see a 7.5 here. I thought I was really confident in it. And at 7.5, I would have been inclined to look at an under just because of, the uncertainties as far as the team goes. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I personally, I think 6.5 is right. I think 6.5 is a really good line for this team. But I just didn't think the sports book were going to follow suit. So, props to Vegas, I guess.
I didn't either. I feel like it's one of those bait opportunities. Vegas must know something that we don't know, so they're going to drop South Carolina at crispy 6.5, get people to take the under or to get people to take the over, and they're going to win 5 games this year. So Vegas knows it all. If a line ever looks too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah, amen. Well, that wraps it up for South Carolina for me. I don't know about you.
I'm good on South Carolina.
All right, well, let's head into the next one. Let's dive into Tennessee. Um, we have, I think, relatively similar outlooks on the Volunteers. So you may be a little bit higher on them than I am. So I want you to kick this one off. I'm curious to see what you think and then compare it to me because after doing a little bit of research and reviewing, I surprised myself a little bit with my win total. So I want to hear what you got to say.
So Tennessee was a team that I had talked about on the SEC East breakdown before we did some like schedule look at and actual research on all this stuff. It was just going off the dome, and I actually had Tennessee at 2 in the SEC East. Now, obviously, that have Kentucky 10-2 on the season. I don't that's probably not going to hold true. Just giving you a little pre context to what's about to happen. So they're over under set at 7.5. I feel like that's a very fair number for Tennessee. It's kind of one of those numbers where you're kind of sitting in the middle right there, and I like the over. Honestly, I feel like they could have hit 8.5, and you probably would have made it a little bit. People think a little bit more, but Vegas wants you to spend your money on stuff. They want you to try to find those crispy bets. So week 1, they start the season off against Ball State at home. I have Tennessee winning that game. Then they go on the road against Pittsburgh, and I actually have Tennessee losing that game in Pittsburgh. We talk about Pittsburgh. I know they lost Kenny Pickett, but they're bringing in Keaton Slovis. So I'm not saying Keaton Slovis is going to be Kenny Pickett, and Slovis hasn't really shown us much the past 2 years, other than his freshman season when he first came to USC. But I'm still a high guy on Slovis. I liked what I saw from him prior to the injury, and I think that he can go over to Pittsburgh and be very successful. Week 3 versus Akron, I had them winning, and then week 4 versus Florida, I had them winning. Then they head into a bye week 5. Week 6 at LSU, I had them beating LSU on the road. Week 7 versus Alabama, I had them losing that game. Then we go to week 8 versus UT Martin. I had them winning that game. Week 9 versus Kentucky, I had them winning that game. I think I mentioned that earlier in the Kentucky breakdown, so I'm not going to go too much in depth in it. Week 10 at Georgia, I had them losing that game. Week 11 versus Missouri, I had them winning. Week 12 at South Carolina, I had them losing. Week 13 at Vanderbilt, I have them winning for a final record of 8-4, which would put me right at the over for Tennessee.
Okay, so we're not too far off.
It's actually interesting because I had put Tennessee at second, like I mentioned earlier, and right now with how my breakdowns are going, they would finish behind both Kentucky and South Carolina because I have South Carolina also at 8-4, but beating them,
Okay.
so winning the tiebreaker.
Okay. We have a couple differences. One key one I want to hit on. So if you're good, I'll go ahead and dive into mine.
Yeah, go ahead.
So a little background on Tennessee. Is their coach's last name Hupel?
Josh Heupel.
Heupel is how you pronounce that. All right. Josh Heupel. He is one of only 4 Tennessee coaches since 1941 to win at least 7 regular season games in his first season. So credits to him, man.
Mhm.
Um, Ask a Tennessee fan, they'll tell you they're going to win 10 games this year, especially with the return of Hendon Hooker and Cedric Tillman at receiver. But that's just not the case for me. The offense is good, very good, great even. I mean, Hooker, he's a stud. Tillman, he's also a stud. Both guys I expect to get Heisman looks at, you know, throughout the duration of the season. I actually put a note here in my notes that to interject and say, take the over for this team. All right, this team scores a lot of points, and they're probably going to give up a good bit of points as well. They returned 4 offensive line starters and a very underrated run game with Jabari Small in the backfield. This offensive line is probably upwards of top 3 in the SEC, if I were to give my honest opinion. So if they can get a little production from the run game with Jabari Small, I also think they brought in a transfer and a top recruit in the backfield as well. So watch out for that. They might have a little 3-headed monster. The reason I'm not high on Tennessee, they're Tennessee.
Yeah. They're the New York
They
Mets of the SEC East.
they're the New York Mets. It's man, Tennessee. They do the same thing every year where they get hype. They think this is the year. This is the year. Every year is the year. Well, it's just not, man. It's not the year. It's not gonna be the year. Hendon Hooker, I love Hendon Hooker. I think he's a great player. I really like Cedric Tillman as well. Um, but they're bringing back the worst passing defense in the SEC. Um, they're also the worst defense in the SEC in third down efficiency.
Hmm.
So again, take the over here, guys. If you're going to bet on a team throughout the season and you want to get some interesting bets out there, take the over. Tennessee is a sure lock for the over. They're going to score a lot of points. They're going to sling the ball around, and they're going to give up a lot of points as well. They can't defend for jack. Key games for me. I've got week 2 at Pitt as a key game in Acrisure Stadium.
Yeah.
Used to be Heinz Field. I've got them winning this game. I do. I
Okay.
have them winning week 2 against Pitt. Week 9 against Kentucky at home. I have them losing this one. I think Will Levis is just going to be a little bit too much, and I think that Kentucky defense is very, very good, so they may have the answer for them. In the week 12 at South Carolina, I mentioned when we did the South Carolina breakdown, I've got Tennessee losing that game as well. So
Okay.
when you
We're
do
so
my
we're the
full
same
schedule
there.
breakdown, yeah, we're pretty similar there. If you do my full schedule breakdown, I go top to bottom of what I've got, wins and losses. I've got them at 7. So I do have them at the under here. Again, it's not a super confident pick for me because Tennessee is a type of team that can sneak up on you. I say it every episode, I feel like. So 7.5 is probably the right number here. Again, shout out to Vegas. These guys, they do what they do, and they're still in business for a reason. So I have them at 7. Um, I'm fairly confident at the 7. I will not be laying any money on it, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and this is one I'm going to avoid too. I wanted to mention you had mentioned that they have 4 returning offensive linemen. They have as many returning offensive linemen as Cade Mays' father has fingers. So, or on that one hand, it got chopped off by a chair in at the University of Georgia. So that's
Yeah,
definitely a good sign.
it wasn't on purpose.
No, definitely not on purpose. It's just he just left our school after that, and now what is Cade Mays up to? Is he still there?
I don't think so.
Yeah, he disappeared off the planet. I think after his father lost his fingers and transferred over to Tennessee.
A quick Google search tells me that he was a 6th round draft pick by the Carolina Panthers.
Okay, okay. So Carolina got them a guy with a father
Yeah,
with only 9 fingers. So
there you go.
very nice. So I am good on Tennessee. I know we had a couple ones that were different, but you're right below that 7.5. I'm right above that 7.5. So I'm in the same boat as you, where there's no money to be betted on this season line, because honestly I could see it going either way. So I'm not gonna put money on. I have dubs in games that I am not too sure on, and I have L's in games I am not too sure on. So there's a lot of stuff going on in this Tennessee schedule that I am a little bit excited to see. Like that week 2 matchup at Pittsburgh. That is going to be a ton of fun to watch.
Yeah, that's gonna be a banger for sure. That wraps it up for me too. So without further ado, let's head into the most exciting team in the SEC East, the Vanderbilt Commodores.
Oh, I thought you were throwing a layup. I thought we were at Georgia, because I completely forgot Vanderbilt was a team. So, I
Yeah,
guess I
as you
guess
should.
I guess we'll get into Vanderbilt. I lead off the last one, or did you lead off the last one?
I believe you did. So I'll kick it off. It's going to take all of 5 seconds for me. Um, this team is putrid. This team, this school, this program is absolutely horrendous. They're an embarrassment to the SEC. Like
Yeah,
we said, if we're going to give Vandy a positive note, a good outlook, Nashville's a great city.
yeah.
That's it. Um, their over under and wins is set at 2.5. I hate to be this guy, Jake, but I've got the under.
That-
I think
I
they're going to win. I think they're going to win 2 games.
I respect it. I respect it, and I'll give my breakdown in just a second, and it should be fun. I don't want to say too much.
I think they're going to lose the week 1 game, week 0 for college football at Hawaii. I think they're going to lose that game. We're going to be betting on it in the Bahamas.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm expecting Vandy to lose that game. I will be betting against Vanderbilt in that game. Um, they opened the season with Hawaii in Honolulu, Elon at home, Wake Forest at home, and NIU in Illinois. Um, my only 2 wins for this team come in week 2 and week 4 against Elon and at NIU. And even then, at NIU concerns me. So they're going to get blown out by Wake Forest. They're going to lose to Hawaii. And then they finish out the season, man, with an absolute gauntlet of a schedule. It just does not look good for them. And I feel bad if you're a student there, if you're a player there, if you're a coach there, or if you're just a fan in general. But I've got Vanderbilt at 2 wins, and I feel pretty confident about it. I would be inclined to say I'd be willing to sprinkle a little bit on the under.
So, what if I was to tell you that Vanderbilt is going to cover the over in the first 4 weeks? They're going to start the season off 3-1. I actually have, and it's so funny we're talking about a matchup between Vanderbilt and Hawaii as being the breakup of the over under. I have been beating Hawaii week 0. Um so I'll give a full schedule breakdown just for the people interested. We mentioned the over unders 2.5. Hawaii week 0. I had that as a win on Vanderbilt schedule. What was the spread? We can already get 7.5, maybe Vanderbilt. I want to say something like that. Then we
And now
play. What is it?
I'm checking right now.
Okay, get back with me. You can interrupt me at any time. Week 1 they play Elon. That's good. I had them winning that game. Week 2, they play Wake Forest. It is a home game, but they, like Kenny had mentioned earlier, they're going to get absolutely dominated by Wake Forest. That is going to be a 40-point loss. Week 3 at NIU, I have them winning that game. Like Kenny mentioned, it is one that I had to think about, but after looking at records and stuff, I ended up giving Vanderbilt the win. And then week 4 at Alabama. These are all losses. I'm not even going to tell you what they are after. Week 4 at Alabama. Week 5 is a bye. Week 6 is versus Ole Miss. Week 7 at Georgia. Week 8 at Missouri. Week 9 is a bye. Week 10 versus South Carolina. Week 11 at Kentucky. Week 12 versus Florida. And week 13 versus Tennessee. All of those are losses.
Vandy's a 7.5 point favorite at Hawaii.
Okay, so I was right. Nice.
Very interesting point to mention here. ESPN has Hawaii with a 72% chance to win.
Okay, so a money line sprinkle.
I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen in this game. This is the most like Hawaii against Vandy in week 0 at 10:30 p.m. in August. Like
Is this the most electric game of the season?
this is going to be the greatest football game of all time.
Well, it's like we mentioned in the last podcast, me and Kenny like good football. We like teams to put up a lot of points, and hopefully that's going to be the one that we see a lot of points. I'm rooting for you, Vandy. Score 40. Hawaii, score 45. I'll be excited.
And honestly, you and I are going to bet on this game, and you're taking Vandy, which is the primary reason why I'm taking Hawaii. You know, let's do a let's. It'd be I'd be remiss if I said that it would be, a little more interest or not. If I didn't say that it wouldn't be a little bit more interesting to start the season on opposite sides. So let's let it ride. Let's get a little rivalry going. Week 0.
Yeah, a little week 0 rivalry. And we mentioned earlier the Mississippi State LSU game is going to be our biggest rivalry whenever that comes around, and it's going to be a fun one.
Gonna be a banger. All right. Well, it all comes down to this, boys,
It all
boys and
comes
girls.
down to the big ones, and shall I say, the big dogs. Mr. Kenny, you want?
Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to your 2021 college football national champions.
oh yeah, college football national champs, yes sir. Oh. That's like
Oh,
background
oh,
crowd noise.
oh,
Yeah,
oh, 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 oh.
that's what I'm talking about. Got barks on the cast. Let's go.
The Georgia team, man, we're all the way back.
Yeah, we are back. We are here. 3.5 weeks away from meeting the Quackers and Mercedes Benz. So we are close.
I want to start this off by reading, by kind of briefly going over an article, if that's okay with you, Mr. Jacob here.
Yeah. Go ahead with it.
All right, so I thought it was pretty interesting. This is an article written by Athlon Sports. It's a preview to Georgia's season heading into 2022. It's a kind of a season preview and prediction on what you can see. So I want to go over a couple key points here, and then I'll let Jake kick it off, and we'll kind of, maybe we'll walk through this one together. Um, the national championship hurdle has been cleared in Athens, Georgia, and now a new challenge awaits, defending it. Georgia, in its seventh season under Kirby Smart, the recently extended highest paid coach in college football.
Let's go.
All right.
Rightfully so.
This team is as talented as ever, but getting back to the winning, the big one will be extremely tough, as evidenced by the number of Bulldogs who were selected in the 2022 NFL Draft. The offense returns a significant amount of production and experience, but the defense, a unit that was historically good in 2021, will aim to reload rather than rebuild. I'll take that and more if UGA has designs on going back to back. Jake and I have touched on it in the past. This defense is much, much, much better than people give credit. Um, they're bringing back a lot of guys, even though we did lose some key players. Obviously, you see the draft and how it went down. Georgia had some dogs, and we lost some, but we're bringing back a lot of guys and a lot of really quality players. As hard as it is to believe, Stetson Bennett is back for his sixth season at Georgia and his seventh of college ball after spending 2018 in JUCO. He was the subject of great scrutiny during the 2021 season. As fans, some media types were clamoring for JT Daniels, who began the season as a starter. The switch never happened, and Stetson ultimately led us to the Natty. Stetson's seen it all. He silenced doubters in the Orange Bowl game, earned the MVP, and then dazzled against Alabama. We all know the story. We've got the guys in there: Carson Beck, Brock Vandegrift, Gunnar Stockton, super highly touted recruits, and they're sitting under the walk-on, the mailman. We have faith in the mailman as Georgia fans. We always do. Now, the running back room, obviously Georgia's known as RBU, and it's for a reason. You have the ability to plug and play that position for years and years and years. We've been able to do it, and we're going to continue to do it. We lose Zeus and James Cook, but we bring in Kenny Mack and Kendall Milton. These guys are still there. They got significant PT. They had fantastic springs and fantastic seasons last year. You talk about Branson Robinson. This dude is an absolute unit. He looks like Michael Turner and Aaron Donald had a baby. I think he's worth a look this season. He's going to get some PT, in my opinion. The transfer portal hit our pass catching group a little bit more than we would have liked to see. Jermaine Burton, obviously, he's an elephant now in Alabama. Now we've got some pretty talented players in that receiving group. You talk about a guy like A.D. Mitchell, the top ranked tight end room in all of college football, the top ranked position group specifically. Now you talk. I want to hit back on A.D. Mitchell. This dude had one of the most impactful catches in school history in the Natty. Absolute stud. You talk about a guy like Arik Gilbert. We're bringing back some absolute units as far as the pass catching games go. The offensive line is a little bit of a retool, but you bring a guy like Broderick Jones, a guy like what's his name? Who's the trash stash Morgan Wallen looking white boy?
I want to say Tate. I am so sorry right now. I should remember this. He got hurt last year.
Yes. I can't remember his last name for the life of me.
You can keep on going. I'll find it for you.
A little bit on the defense. The 2021 defense was special. In my opinion, it's the greatest defense in college football history. I'm expecting the 2022 group to pick it up where they left off. Honestly, are they going to be as good? No, but you're comparing
Tate Ratledge.
Tate Ratledge. There he is.
There it is.
I don't know why I couldn't think of his name. Dude's an icon. Obviously, if you're expecting them to pick up where they left off and just keep continuing as the greatest defense in college football history, that's unrealistic. But I'm expecting them to pick up where they left off from a production standpoint and say that this is going to be still a top tier defense, and that's not a reach by any means. And if you're a Georgia fan, you know it is. We're bringing back guys like Jalen Carter, who's probably the most talented defender from the 2021 squad. And it's kind of crazy to think when you talk about Jordan Davis and guys like that. Jalen Carter is a guy that's been getting number one, number two overall pick looks, projections with Will Anderson this year. Um, so the outside
Even
linebacker,
Jordan Davis, we're talking about a defense that had the number one overall pick in the NFL draft with Trayvon Walker. So
exactly,
it
exactly.
is pretty crazy. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to put that out there too.
The pass rushing group got a huge boost. I mean, we bring back Nolan Smith, we bring back Robert Beal, who was the sack leader last year. They wreaked havoc all last season, especially during the playoffs. Inside linebacker, that's the weak point. We lose, Quay Walker and obviously Nakobe, who are absolute legends. But we're bringing in guys like Dumas Johnson. We're bringing in guys like Munden, and even is it Xavier or Xavier? Sorry. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these guys are freak athletes, so you can kind of plug and play them at the middle linebacker, at the inside linebacker position. They're going to give you some really quality production. Now, the secondary, it's probably the best secondary in college football, in my opinion. You're bringing back guys like Keely Ringo, and then you talk about other guys like sophomore Kamari Lassiter. He's had a crazy spring. Obviously, Chris Smith is back. Like we're kind of loaded as far as that goes. So the secondary is probably the strong point of the defense, along with the pass rush. So that's just a little bit of a breakdown. Now, a final analysis. Let's read off what the article had here. Georgia's talent level gives it a high floor and a high ceiling. Smart's crew will be big, fast, and physical on both sides of the ball, but it's never easy to replace the amount of production the Bulldogs lost after winning ship. Finding leaders will be the key to navigating yet another workable schedule. Um, I don't really like the wording of a workable schedule when I look at this Georgia schedule, and I think Jake will agree with me. Um, I think it's very, very favorable for this UGA team. Um,
I agree.
you're coming back after a national championship season. You kick off the year with a week one matchup against Oregon in prime time in Mercedes Benz. Um, it's going to be a talked about game. It's going to be a heavily bet game. It's everything you want it to be from a week one standpoint. This game is not even on my radar to be a close game. I think we're going to blow these guys out. It's not going to be close, in my opinion. Um, so that's a little breakdown for you, just to give you a little background on the UGA team. I'm sure Jake will have some stuff too. So, Jake, why don't you go ahead and dive into it? Let's get into some win totals and some predictions for this team.
So before we got into that, I did want to mention something on the defensive side of the ball. I think you did a great job breaking down the offense and defense. But one guy that is on my radar very like hard right now for the defense is Mr. Malachi Starks. Malachi Starks was the number one safety in this past year's recruiting class, but he's a guy that you can kind of play in multiple spots. And I've heard a lot of people saying that he might drop down to that nickel spot right away at UGA. And, a guy like that, you move him down closer to the line of scrimmage, he's going to be an absolute ball hawk. I'm pretty sure that's his type of game. He's going to be a guy that jumps routes, that, kind of hides a little bit, and all of a sudden he pops in out of nowhere and steals the ball and gets a 75-yard INT touchdown return. So he's a guy I'm really excited to look at. Middle linebacker, you mentioned it. Those guys that we have coming in with Munden and Dumas Johnson, those are going to be two studs that are going to fill that role. I did want to mention that Latavius Brini did also leave in the transfer portal this year, and I'm not really big on Mr. Latavius Brini, especially whenever you're talking about a safety core that is already absolutely loaded in top 3 in college football, arguably the best in college football with Chris Smith, Tyke Smith, and Dan Jackson, also bringing in Malachi Starks now. So I think Brini kind of made the smart decision for him, but he's a guy that had PT last year, so it's somebody that you look at. But I agree with everything you said about Georgia's defense. They're going to be a lot better than what people are giving them. So let's jump into the schedule. Over under at 10.5. So week one, we have a neutral site game in Atlanta, Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Very neutral, obviously.
Yeah, very neutral. I'm sure Oregon is, it's going to be half and half. It's going to be a lot of green, a lot of
For sure.
red. It's going to be split right down the middle. No, really, I Georgia's going to cover 95% of that stadium, if not 100. So, Oregon, y'all are going to have a bad time. I'm sure Bo Nix, every single night when he goes to sleep now, he's going to have nightmares for the next 3 weeks because this is an absolutely terrifying thing. And I think anybody on Oregon's football team, out of everybody, I think Bo Nix is the one that understands it. I know they have our DC from last year, Mr. Dan Lanning, I want to say. Isn't Dan Lanning the head coach now at Oregon? Yep, that was their hire.
Yes, sir.
Dan Lanning understands it, but he's never been on the opposite side of it. He always got to sit under Mr. Kirby Smart's wing and is, Mr. Kirby, can I do this? Yeah, do that. So You know, Mr. Dan Lanny, you're gonna get to see the opposite side of what you've been doing to people forever, and it's not gonna be good for you. So I obviously have Georgia winning that game, and like Kenny said, I don't really see it being a super close contest. Week 2, we play Samford at home. That's a win, obviously. Week 3, we go to South Carolina. This is one I'm looking out for because the early season matchups are usually pretty tough, and sometimes you can see some crazy stuff happening in the first couple weeks of college football. But I still have Georgia pulling it off, and I'm not going to sound like a broken record and keep on saying it, but I don't see any of these games. I'm not going to say that I see any of these games on the schedule really being close. Obviously, there's going to be a couple games that get a little bit scary. Florida last year took us to 2 minutes in the I want to say 2 minutes left in the first half last year. And I think it was a tied game until we scored like 3 touchdowns in 2 minutes and started blowing them out the water. So any college, any Saturday, you can see a nail biter, but I'm not going to keep on saying that they're going to be blowouts. Week 4, we play Kent State at home. That's a win. That is one I will confidently say it's going to be a blowout.
100%.
Yeah, that one I'm confident in. Week 5, we go to Missouri. That's a win. Week 6, we play Auburn at home. I have them winning that game. Week 7, Vanderbilt. I have them winning that game. Week 8 is
Homecoming.
homecoming. Yeah, that's gonna be a fat win. Vanderbilt. That's also one. Not gonna be a chance. Week 8, we have a bye right before we go to Florida for Jacksonville, a very, very neutral site stadium. 95% Georgia, 5% Florida.
Every year.
If Florida has that many fans, I don't even know if they have enough fans to make up the 5% now. I mean, I'm sure a lot of those guys have probably traded in that orange and blue for black and red. It looks a lot better.
It sure does look a lot better. And if Florida does have any fans, they're probably going to mark that one off the schedule. Don't know if they'll show up for that one.
Yeah, it's probably not safe to drive with that much tears in your eyes on the way home. So they're probably smart. Actually, I don't know. It's Florida. They might not be. And I just had a mean voice crack while talking about Florida. I am so sorry. Week 10 versus Tennessee. I'm just gonna skip that one now. Week 10 versus Tennessee. That's a dub. Week 11 at Mississippi State. That's a dub. We know who the better Bulldogs are. Week 12 at Kentucky. That's a dub. And week 13 versus Georgia Tech. That's a dub. So, my final record for Georgia is 12-0, and I wanted to mention the same thing I mentioned with Alabama the other day. It's very easy to say Georgia's going to go 12-0. It's very easy to say Georgia's going to go 11-1. I'm just not going to be the one that tries to point out a loss on the schedule. And honestly, it's more so for Alabama because Georgia's not going to lose a football game this year. I don't see Georgia losing a football game in the next 10 years, honestly.
I don't see. Let's see. I'm 23 years old. I don't see Georgia losing a football game for you know hopefully until the day I die. So there's that. Um, when you look at Georgia compared to Alabama this year, obviously the teams stack up. Alabama's bringing back a good group, and they're probably going to be. I think the coaches poll came out, and they were like very significantly the number one team voted. Um, and Georgia was third, I believe, behind Ohio State, which is absolute blasphemy, but that's whatever.
They can keep
Um,
sleeping. That's fine.
yeah, go ahead, keep sleeping. We appreciate it. So this Georgia team, man, when you look at the schedule and the lineup of the schedule compared to a team like Alabama, and you just talk about the SEC East, and obviously the SEC East is on the rise. They're on the upcoming. There's some teams that have got some ball players. You look at a team like Kentucky, even a team like Tennessee, even a team like South Carolina that we mentioned heavily in this podcast. Like the SEC East is headed in the right direction, but they're just not quite at the level that the West is. So when you look at from a scheduling perspective and interconference play, um, talking about UGA playing in the SEC East, and you talk about a team like Alabama playing in the SEC West, the odds of Georgia having a letdown against a conference team are a lot less likely, in my opinion, than a team like Alabama, just because of the competition. So to me, it's easier to say that Georgia is going to be 12-0 undefeated team regular season than it is for Alabama. Granted, like Jake just mentioned, 11-1, 12-0, those are very, very easy schedule predictions. So I'm not coming out here saying that we're making hot takes or we're doing in-depth analysis and that we're breaking it down from the X's and O's, but we kind of are. And when you look at it as Georgia fans, we're super familiar with this team. We're super familiar with what we can do. And I'm very, very confident as well in a 12-0 season. I don't see any reason why any of these games should be even considered as a loss. Like Jake said, there's going to be close games. There's going to be games that are a little bit tighter than you want them to be, but from an SEC West perspective, man, I just don't see it. It shakes out very favorable for these Bulldogs, and 12-0. I fully expect it, and I really think that it may be worth a little flyer here to take the over 10.5.
Oh, I definitely like the over. Maybe an Alabama Georgia over parlay.
Yeah,
Both the top teams, both with 10.5 over under spreads. So yeah, I mean, is that it for Georgia? Is that what you had for Georgia?
that's it for me, man. 12-0 and a natty repeat.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of the ones that's kind of too hard to go like super in depth in. Obviously, game by game. I mean, what do you want me to say? 40-0, 35-3, 42-7. So I'm not gonna
Yeah,
go score by score.
you want us to give you our actual game score predictions? 69-0 week after week.
Yeah. Stetson's gonna throw for 3 tutties, and Gunner's gonna come in and throw for 3 after him. So.
That's facts.
Yeah, but that's also it for Georgia on for me too. That was all I had for Georgia. 12-0.
Well, Matt, it was another good one. We love to talk about the SEC. We love to talk about college football. We say it every episode. We're getting closer to that time of year. I want to thank our sponsors, Miller Lite.
Uh,
Um,
uh, I don't
that's it.
I don't know if can we say that? I mean, I'm sure there's no real problem with it. I mean, we can claim them, right? Right?
As well.
Why not? I mean, I'm sure that if I hold up your bottle on a webcam screen, like I probably will whenever college football starts up, or whenever we start doing live college football TikToks on the TikTok account, Peach State Tailgate, um, with cold Miller Lights
What?
in hand, watching live football, it's going to be absolutely electric. And maybe they don't pay us for it, but we'll support your brand.
Yeah, who says no? Not me.
No, I have to agree with you. It was a great episode, and I'll hit us with the stuff. Find us on YouTube if you want to rewatch this podcast with mine and Kenny's beautiful faces on it. You get to not I'm gonna say the hat and the shirts. There, I'll say the hats and the shirts. Because we were rocking the Georgia apparel. So if you want to find us on YouTube, it's Peach State Tailgate. Twitter, we post some stuff. You'll see some memes and stuff we're posting. That's at Peach State Pod. Or if you're watching the YouTube, it's on. I can never get the point right. It's right there, on the screen. And then TikTok, Peach State Tailgate is the TikTok. So if you want to find us on any of the socials, kind of keep up with what we're doing and what our plans are. We had talked about the schedule a little bit last time. We're gonna try to put out episodes Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be a guaranteed set schedule because obviously stuff happens in life and we can't always just keep up with it. But we'll definitely let y'all know on Twitter or anything like that if stuff is planned to change. So if we can't get an episode out, maybe we might reschedule an episode, do it a different day of the week. And I'm sorry, we always talk about keeping these podcasts short, and this is like the 4th time that I've mentioned this, and we're only through episode 5, and we are an hour and 30 minutes in. So we get to talking ball, and the mouth starts rolling, and the consciousness goes away, and then you look over, and you're like, "Holy cow! I have to get up in like 6.5 hours." So actually, like 6 hours. So this is going to be a very fun meeting in the morning, and it's going to go great.
Hey, well, we say it every episode, but we can't thank y'all enough for listening. The reception of this podcast and the feedback that we've gotten has just been it's been more than we imagined, and we're grateful for every single one of you guys listening and tuning in. And I believe that's going to wrap it up for episode 5. So again, thank you so much, Jake. Plug the socials. Check us out. Leave us a review. Interact with us. We look forward to it. I know we talked about doing a Q&A coming up pretty soon. So anything you
Yeah.
guys can give us, we appreciate it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's it for me, man. We
That is
sure do
it for me
appreciate it.
too. I wanted to mention that we are 10 downloads away from 100 downloads on the podcast. I'm not somebody that keeps numbers up, but early on, it's always fun to see where you're doing. And who knows? You might be the lucky 100. Woo woo.
Let's
So
go.
again, like Kenny said, thank you guys so much, and that's gonna be the end of the podcast. We'll see you guys on Friday.
Catch y'all next.